Lawmakers in Washington have avoided another government shutdown with final approval given for a temporary funding package to avoid any disruptions. Here to break some of this down for us, we've got Professor Mike Yon from Sam Houston State University. Professor, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks, Alex.
All right, let's start with this. This deal is temporary. The funding is tiered. So there are two more deadlines that we're going to have to pay attention. One in January, one in February. Do you think the tiered funding idea will make any difference as it comes to avoiding a shutdown again next year?
It may make a difference, but the difference may make it more likely. As one Democrat said, one Democratic congressman said, it now makes it twice as likely because there's two opportunities for such a shutdown.
We know that the situation and the negotiations caused a lot of issues for previous Speaker Kevin McCarthy, so much so that they voted him out of office for the first time ever. So what makes this deal different for new Speaker Mike Johnson?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. I mean, there could be some things like after you go through two or three speakers, maybe the party wants to kind of move on with some actual business. But I think the real thing is that the hard right trusts Mike Johnson. So they're willing to take some temporary setbacks in terms of what is happening now, as long as they win the long-term victories. So they're giving him more rope than they were willing to give McCarthy because they didn't trust McCarthy.
You know, obviously there was that faction of far-right GOP lawmakers that brought up the vote to oust Kevin McCarthy and then successfully got it when the Democrats, none of the Democrats joined in voting to keep Kevin McCarthy as Speaker. Democrats did join in this time to get this government funding package passed. Do you anticipate that that will be the case when we get there in January and February when these next two deadlines come up?
Well, in some ways, it was in everyone's interest to get it done now. The hard right has long been suspicious of and resentful of the fact that there's sometimes this vote right before the holidays. And so if they want to play hardball, they have to vote to cut federal government salaries and different benefits right before Thanksgiving and Christmas and appear to be the Scrooges. That's not going to be in play in January and February for either the Republicans or the Democrats. So I think what's going to happen is a bloodier brawl in the early next year.
You say a bloodier brawl. I think that's language that we haven't really used before, but that's pretty typical for language that's being thrown around on Capitol Hill these days. Does language have anything to do with how these two sides see each other? Is there a sense of compromise that can be found, or is this going to be a knockdown, drag-out fight?
It's going to be harder, and I think one of the reasons I use that terminology is because it's already been pretty bad. I mean, I think Kevin McCarthy probably feels pretty bloodied and battered.
He got elbowed in the hallway the other day, I think, or was doing the elbowing, excuse me. Yeah.
But I think what's going to be unique or different about early next year is if there's ever a time that people of different belief systems should be able to get along, it's maybe during the holidays. Early next year will be right before the primaries. And so what's going to happen is these congressional figures have the pressure of an upcoming vote with someone of a more extreme base of their party running against them. So they could very well have to pay at the ballot box in March or April when the primaries take place. And they will be more reluctant to compromise if it means for them a defeat at the polls.
I only have about 30 seconds left here, but the plan did not include aid for Ukraine or Israel. That's obviously been a sticking point for a lot of these lawmakers on both sides of the aisle. How much of a focus do you think that is going to be as they negotiate this next spending?
I think some of those can be compromised out, but it's going to, and I think the Republicans will compromise on that. It's going to be a big question of whether what they want in return is something the Democrats are willing to give.
It should be something very interesting for us to track, as we have been for the last couple of months there on Capitol Hill. Professor Yon, thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you, Alex.
All right, coming up next on First News at 4, there's